Hello, my dear students. In our course, Contemporary Issues in Economics and Finance, this is the first topic or the first issue in our curriculum, which is the economic effects of COVID-19. But we can summarize our course in one slide, like 2, 12, 14, 20. What about two cases in our course? Case number 1, the intra and the inter-industry. What about 12? 12, the number of topics or issues in our course. What about 14? 14, number of tables, and 20, this is the number of figures. So our course 2, 12, 14, and 20. Topics. We select the modern topics to provide skills for our students. So the recent issue in our economy or in our world, the problem of COVID-19 or COVID-19 pandemic, but we will analyze the COVID-19 from economic view. The same, we introduce some topics like clean technologies and green bonds and mega projects, Incoterms 2020, and global trade finance. We select the topics and according to the intended learning outcomes to provide the targeted skills for our students. For instructions, 2 categories of our lectures, face-to-face lectures and online, and all the instructions cleared in our lectures. The first topic, COVID-19 from an economic view. This is the first topic and urgent topic for our course. According to the WHO, or the World Health Organization, on the date March or 11 of March, WHO announced or classified the COVID-19 outbreak as a global pandemic. What do we mean by pandemic? Pandemic, this is the level of crisis. Level of crisis. When we classify any crisis as a pandemic, the conditions: number 1, number of deaths greater than 100,000. At the same time, this crisis spread and accelerated in more than one country, more than one region. What about the fact sheet for the pandemics or COVID-19 pandemics? In our date, 14th of November 2020, we talk about total cases or total active cases of COVID-19 over 53.3 millions. The recovered cases 34.4 millions, and we talk about the deaths for 1.3 millions. In this case, we can talk about the percent of recovered cases relative to the total cases. We talk about mainly 64.5%. 64.5% of total cases are recovered. What about the death rate or the loss rate? Loss rate equal to 0.2%. 0.2%, this is the death rate. But as we mentioned in the first lecture, or in the first slide, we will present the COVID-19 from economic view, not from medical view. So the transmission mechanism for the COVID-19, we talk about 2 inverse cases, 2 inverse directions. The direction number 1, there is a drop or decreasing in jobs, damage in services sector, and decreasing in the demand for unnecessary consumer products. Unnecessary consumer products like luxury products, there is negative for demand. On the other hand, there is the upper or increasing in the demand for necessary products. Examples for necessary products when we talk about medical care products like the mask, the face mask, we talk about this product kind of medical care product. Okay, there is increase in the demand of necessary products like grocery products, like medical care products. What about PMP, public and private expenditure on health? Public and the private expenditure on health care, yes, the same increasing in the public expenditure when we talk about the government level. At the same time, there is increase in the private expenditure when we talk about the household level or the family level. Four interconnected windows to explain the COVID-19 loss. Number one, household consumption. Mainly on average, there is a contracting in the household consumption, except the necessary products. But on average, the expenditure or spending for household decreased. The second, the reasons for this decrease may be for the social distance, for the panic, for customers, and so on. The second window, when we talk about the production window or the supply window, due to the factories lockdown or economy shut down, so the supply side decreased and production decreased in some categories or some sectors. The third, trade and investment. There is a correlation between trade and investment. For trade, some literature or some researchers argue that there is increasing logistics costs on average by 30%. An increase in logistics costs, the reasons are maybe to use or to apply additional actions, additional procedures for safety, for the safety issue. So an increase in logistics costs required extra increase in the final price. So this is a burden for consumer. What about trade? The uncertainty level and risk level increased about the future. So there is a pessimistic expectations for investors about the future of COVID-19, mainly in the first half of the year 2020. So there is a pessimistic expectations. The last, financial markets. The link between financial markets created downtrend for indices for all developed and developing markets. The first impact of COVID-19 on economic growth. According to the World Bank, COVID-19 is the greatest recession in history since the year 1871. According to the decreasing in GNI, decreasing in GDP, so this is announcement from the World Bank. COVID-19 is the bad history or the bad recession, the bad memory for the world economy. As we mentioned in our figure, the orange line, this is the growth rate from the year 2010 to the year 2020 for EMD, emerging markets and developing economies. The same, the red line or the red curve, economic growth for advanced economies for the same time. We can analyze this figure by the following. There is increasing for the economic growth rate for emerging markets, but lower fluctuation before 2020, before COVID-19 time. In case of COVID-19 time, the average growth rate for developed or advanced economies around negative 8%. Around negative 8%. So there is economic declining for the advanced economies. The orange line, emerging markets, is the same, negative on average, negative growth rate or economic declining lower than 4%. Lower than 4%. Yes, some exceptions for this trend. For the year 2020, the same World Bank forecasting that some countries achieved the positive growth rate like Guyana, Uganda, Benin, Ethiopia, and Egypt. Egypt, in the first estimation, expected to achieve 2.1 as the economic growth, and there is updating in this value, and in the last report for the World Bank, maybe 3.2%. Maybe 3.2%. The bottom last believed was a negative 13.5%. What about the expectations for the next year, 2021? 2021 may be slow recovery for all countries, but the highest growth rate for the next year, Djibouti by 9.2%, Albania, Cote d'Ivoire, Maldives, and Lucia. So the bottom last in Africa, like South Sudan, with a negative 23.6% as economic decline. The second, the impact on commodity prices. Generally, any pandemic or any crisis created the disequilibrium in the market between demand and supply. Maybe excess demand, maybe excess supply. So, due to this disequilibrium, maybe there is decreasing in prices. For example, oil decreased by negative 50% in the first from the month number 1, January to the May in this year 2020. Coal, natural gas, and so on, all negative prices except gold. Gold in the time of COVID-19, especially in the first half of the year 2020, we talk about increasing in price around 10% or 9.9%. What about this increasing price? Increasing in price because gold, any dealers or any investors deal with gold as a safe haven for investment. So in the time of crisis, in the time of pandemic, investors go to purchase gold. In normal cases, no, investors will open new projects. So the gold is the only exception from the lower prices trend. The next impact of COVID-19 on global activities, good news and bad news. Good news in some cases like air pollution. Air pollution decreased by 19%. Yes, good for global economy, good for environment, and for all issues. Bad news for some sectors like restaurant sector, open table reservations decreased by 85%, negative impact. Flight cancellations with the airline with a negative 79.4%, yes, negative. Retail, negative 37.2%, the same negative for retail industry. What about the impact of COVID-19 on commerce or on financial sector? In this case, generally all dealers, all investors in the financial sector face unfamiliar future for all parts. In case of banks, number one, any bank try to balance between protecting deposits plus increasing the client satisfaction. At the same time, there is a new challenge, which is new regulation from the central bank. For example, suppose if you go to your bank in the time of COVID-19, number one, you will wait outside the bank. You will wait outside the bank, and this is maybe negative for client satisfaction. And due to the panic, maybe there is a problem for deposits. Is my deposit in safe or not safe? But what about regulations? Regulations from central bank, like our example, the client wait outside the bank. What about stock market? Stock market, mainly we talk about the main markets like Dow Jones Industrial Average. This is index for Dow Jones. This is trend for 5 years, fluctuated before 2017, and upper points called peak. We can call peak 1, peak 2, peak 3, peak 4, and so on, peak 5. And the same we can talk about trough. This is the lowest point or the lower point, trough 1, trough 2, and so on. But the first or the most important point, how we can analyze the trend of Dow Jones or any index in the first quarter in the year 2020. In the first quarter, yes, there is a sharp decrease in this index in the first quarter. Why the first quarter? Because, as we mentioned before, WHO announced that COVID-19 is the global pandemic. On which date? On 11th of March 2020. So, talk about the first quarter in this year. We can take this figure, copy and paste with another index like S&P, Standard & Poor's, the same, the trend decreased or sharp decreased in the first quarter of the year 2020, mainly in the date or the day of 20th of March 2020. The same, Nikkei 225, maybe FTSE financial for UK. For Shanghai, yes, this is a fluctuation for this index, but in the first quarter the same decrease, but not sharp like S&P. The impact on global trade, impact of COVID-19 in global trade, this is theoretical analysis, reflects the relationship between demand and supply in two panels. Panel A, this is demand and supply for necessary products. We can call or can write medical care products. In panel B, demand and supply for unnecessary products and luxuries products. Generally, for a necessary product with a constant supply or constant production, there is increase in the demand. According to the impact of COVID-19 on the necessary products market, there is increase in the demand, so the demand curve shifts from the D1 to D2. So there is increase in price and increase in quantity. What about panel B? The demand and supply in case of unnecessary products? No, the demand decreased for unnecessary products from D3 to D4. There is a decrease in demand because customers or clients or consumers concentrate in the necessary products and ignore the unnecessary products. But what about the move of supply curve? The move of supply curve, when supply curve shifts to left, there is a look down. When supply curve shifts to left, there is a look down. Maybe lockdown or shutdown for factories or for economies, mainly in unnecessary products. This is the difference. This figure, we present the impact of COVID-19 in global trade. According to WTO, according to World Trade Organization, the trade value decreased by 18.5% in this year compared with the last year, 2019. Maybe recover slowly in the next year, but which category of products that increased in the international trade? This is the blue line, trade in COVID-19 medical supply. Trade in COVID-19 or gross rate for COVID-19 medical supply. And the orange line, growth rate for total products or total goods. So the growth rate in the first half in the last year 2019 to the second half 6% for trading COVID-19 medical supplies against 2% for the total goods. What about the first half of the year 2020? We talk about 2% at the growth rate for the COVID-19 medical supplies against negative 27% in case of total products. The last impact, the impact of COVID-19 on FDI approval for foreign direct investment. Mainly, according to UNCTAD, the FDI flow worldwide will fall by 40% for the first time since the year 2008. The value of FDI lower than 1 trillion. Mainly, we talk about $900 billion. As we mentioned in our figure, the peak point for FDI in the year 2015 with the value $2 trillion. This is the peak point and fluctuated to reach to the lowest point according to this year 2020. So there is a negative by 40% for the value of FDI in this year compared with the last year. What about expectations for the next year? We'll talk about still decreased in the value of FDI because investment is very sensitive for any crisis and any pandemics. Maybe recovery level in the year 2022. Thank you, and I hope you enjoyed with our lecture and our topic COVID-19, and see you in the next lecture.